some cheats on roll. So I want you to look over what you've got written down about roll and figure out what could you do as a debater which would make it appear more likely to your audience that you have fulfilled your role even if you have not.
Like signposting as a start. Like signpost what you're going to do, and then like at the end re-signpost it, say, so this is what we did.
Yeah, signposting, structurally signposting is very, very critical in BP because judges are trying to follow so many different speakers. So often you will get a substantially higher mark just by re-saying at the end, which shouldn't be worth anything and is. Yes?
Frame the issue as you've already done this and you've already proven why this is true, therefore you win this debate.
Okay. Frequently, judges don't keep sufficient track of analysis in BP, and they accept what are called shortcuts. So I'm going to give you an example of 2 or 3 shortcuts I use all the time. So the first thing I do is I use phrases which signal something to experienced debaters that pretend I've done analysis but haven't. So can anybody think of one of those?
Rational actor.
Yes, that's a classic one. Okay, so the debater will say, Saddam Hussein was not a rational actor. Now, rational actor means a whole series of points that I would have to prove. So I have to prove Saddam Hussein did not act in the best interests of himself. I have to prove he didn't act in the best interests of his country. And I have to prove that his crazy actions harmed others. All of those things are part of the analysis associated with that phrase, rational actor, but I just say that phrase. And then experienced debaters go, oh yeah, they proved that. But actually, you didn't prove that. You just said it in passing. Are there any other phrases like that that I could use? Yeah, so there's lots of economic phrases that we just insert randomly. So we will say, this is an issue of supply and demand, and then we'll move on. Even though yeah.
Disenfranchisement.
Okay, disenfranchisement's another phrase. So disenfranchisement means my right to represent myself was taken away. I have to actually prove how it was taken away, that I should have had the right in the first place. I just don't prove any of that. I just say that I was disenfranchised. Okay, anything else that I would do that with?
Mutually assured destruction.
Yes, that's a lovely
Okay.
one. Frequently used in any international weapons-related topic. So I literally have kind of like a little mental storage, and so I know, okay, this is an international relations topic. The following 5 phrases will get inserted in my
What
debate.
was that fourth one? What did you say?
Mutually assured destruction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Self-interest.
Yeah, self-interest is a lovely phrase as well. So there's lots of those phrases. The next thing that I do all the time is I do something called tossing off, which is where you raise an example, only you don't actually raise an example, you just mention a place or a thing in passing. So you're not actually fully developing and show how that example is actually a good example of the thing. You're just mentioning the example in passing and you say 1 or 2 sentences about it. So I might say something like, and we see the critical need for this action based on Syria in the last 3 months, or we would have seen a similar problem in Lebanon, and then I move on. You've seen good debaters do that, haven't you? Lots. And then the judges are like, and you had these excellent points of analysis around Syria and Lebanon. What's actually happened is the judges just filled in everything they know about Syria and Lebanon. You didn't need to know anything about either one. Okay, so that only works well if you kind of have a big enough picture that you know roughly which countries to mention. But really, that's about it, all you need to know. Yeah.
Or if you don't have a really experienced team against you, because experienced teams will have more spec knowledge and will use that example against you.
They will. So they'll be like, Syria is not a good example because of this, this, and this, and had my opponents known more about Syria, they would have realized that, and they'll go on. Or they'll just outdo you. They're like, well, Syria and Lebanon might be that way, but here, far more tossing off. And then a good judge is like, yeah, none of you had any actual examples, nice try. But most judges are like, wow, did you know a lot about this topic? So does that make sense to everybody? Okay, yeah.
How do you distinguish which judges you should toss off for and which judges you shouldn't toss
That's a good
for?
question. So do you know how you tell if your judge is an experienced university debater?
You recognize them.
You might not recognize them if you're in an unfamiliar province, right? You might or might not. Okay, if you're not Jason and a little bit creepy in the stalking online thing, how would you know?
Shake their hand beforehand and ask how they managed for that.
You could ask, yeah.
Usually how they set up their paper, right? Like if they're an experienced judge, they'll probably use their own paper and they'll like have some kind of term.
They'll have some organizational scheme written on the paper before the round starts. That's a dead giveaway. So an experienced judge will always have some weird column or arrow thing going down ahead of time. Another thing that you'll see them do is they won't write anything through any of your initial structuring other than your model. And when you write an argument, they won't write a lot about it. They'll write the label and maybe the example. So how much they write is a dead giveaway. If they're writing kind of the big pieces that you would write to clash with, it's an experienced judge. A judge who writes absolutely nothing or who writes everything, can't distinguish what's the most important matter, is not experienced. Yep.
Okay, so say you have an experienced judge and like you can't toss off at all, or can you toss off if you have some stack knowledge on the example you're tossing off, but just not enough time?
Experienced judges love toss-off. They tolerate it all the time. They will only critique you on it if you do it and the other side doesn't. So it's one of those, and if you think they're experienced, I usually toss off and add 2 sentences. I do exactly the same thing, I just put a few more sentences that could masquerade as analysis a little bit better. That's really all I do. And they'll still fill in. The brain does. So you're good. Okay, other questions on that front? Okay, third